The flashlight beam cut across the wet grass. October 14th, 2022. A Tuesday night in Franklin, Tennessee. The kind of October air that smells like wood smoke and rotting magnolia leaves. Murph, come here, boy. Nothing. 62-year-old Danny Holloway moved slowly down the back porch steps, the screen door slapping shut behind him. 20 years a Marine, 2 combat tour, he'd walked through worse darkness than this. Then he saw the shape near the fence line, 80 pounds of Belgian Malinois lying on his side, not moving. No, son. Danny's knees hit the cold ground beside the dog. There was foam at Murphy's mouth, a sweet, chemical smell, and next to him, half-eaten, a chunk of raw hamburger meat that didn't belong in any yard on any street in America. From the second-floor window of the McMansion next door, a phone camera caught the whole thing, then a soft laugh. And somewhere in the back of Danny Holloway's mind, in that quiet room where the Marines still lived, a door clicked shut. That was the night everything changed. Let me tell you about a place called Willow Creek Estates. It sits about 20 minutes south of Nashville on the outskirts of Franklin, Tennessee. A neighborhood of 42 homes built in 1987, back when the cornfields still ran right up to the property lines and a man could buy 3 acres for the price of a used pickup truck. The streets curve gently the way old developers used to design them before the cookie-cutter cul-de-sacs took over. The lawns are wide, the maples are old, American flags hang from porches year-round, and the screen doors all creak in slightly different keys. In the summer, you can hear sprinklers ticking in the early morning. In the fall, the smell of burning leaves drifts down from the Henderson place at the end of the block. In the winter, every window glows with the same warm yellow light, like a postcard your grandmother might have framed. Most of the folks on Willow Creek Drive had been there for 30 years. Mrs. Alina Henderson, the retired schoolteacher who fed the stray cats. The Patels, who ran the pharmacy on Main Street. The Marshalls, whose grown kids still came home every Christmas. It was the kind of street where neighbors waved when they passed each other in their driveways, where children rode bikes after dinner, where the 4th of July meant a potluck on the Henderson lawn and the Pledge of Allegiance before the fireworks started. It was peaceful, decent, quiet. And then, in April of 2022, a moving truck pulled up to the empty house at 1247 Willow Creek Drive. And nothing on that street would ever be quiet again. Now, before we talk about what came rolling onto that street, you need to understand who was already living there. His name was Daniel Patrick Holloway, 62 years old, 6'1" with a slight stoop in his shoulders that he blamed on the years and not on the IED that nearly killed him outside Marja, Afghanistan in the summer of 2010. But folks around Willow Creek didn't call him Daniel, they called him Danny. And in a few small circles, in a VFW hall in Memphis, in a few classified after-action reports tucked deep inside a federal archive, they still called him Gunnery Sergeant Holloway, United States Marine Corps, retired. Danny enlisted in 1998. He was 18 years old, the son of a steelworker from Knoxville and a Sunday school teacher who never got over losing him to the Corps. He served 20 years on the DOT, 1st Marine Division, Fallujah in 2004, Helmand Province in 2010, 2 tour that put more lines on his face than the next 40 years of peace ever would. In Fallujah, Danny lost his best friend, Corporal Sean Murphy of South Boston, 22 years old, who took a sniper round on a rooftop they shouldn't have been on. Sean had a fiancée named Megan and a beat-up paperback of Hemingway in his cargo pocket. Danny carried that paperback home in his rucksack and never opened it. You see, folks, some men carry their dead with them their whole lives. Danny was one of them. After Helmand, after the IED that left him with 2 herniated discs and a traumatic brain injury he never quite recovered from, the Marines didn't put Danny back on the front. They sent him to the Marine Corps Criminal Investigation Division, CID, the federal cops of the Corps. For the last 8 years of his career, Danny Holloway didn't kick down doors anymore. He built cases. He chased fraud. He worked alongside FBI agents, federal prosecutors, IRS investigators. He testified in courtrooms from San Diego to Quantico. By the time he medically retired in 2018, his name was in case files most civilians would never see. But that's not what the folks on Willow Creek knew. What they knew was that Danny Holloway lived alone at 1245 Willow Creek Drive in the modest brick rancher he'd inherited from his late wife Sarah's family. Sarah, who died of breast cancer on a snowy February afternoon in 2019. Sarah, whose rose bushes still bloomed every May along the front walk because Danny tended them like sacred relics. What they knew was that he had a daughter named Emma in Nashville who came down for Sunday dinner once a month. That he built furniture in his garage, beautiful walnut tables and rocking chairs that he gave away more than he sold. That he started his mornings with 2 cups of black coffee on his back porch, watching the sunrise over the magnolias. And what they knew, what every kid on the block knew, was that Danny Holloway had a dog. A 4-year-old Belgian Malinois named Murphy. Sleek, watchful, 80 pounds of muscle and loyalty with one ear that flopped slightly when he was tired. A federally certified service dog, trained for PTSD response, deep pressure therapy, and night terror interruption. The Veterans Administration had paired Danny with Murphy in 2020, after a particularly dark winter where Danny had stopped answering his daughter's calls. Murphy slept at the foot of Danny's bed every night. Murphy was the reason Danny still got up in the morning. And Danny had named that dog after the boy on the rooftop in Fallujah. Now, every Sunday at 7 p.m. sharp, Danny's phone would ring. It was the same call every week going back 20 years. An old Marine buddy named Marcus Reeves checking in. Just a quiet conversation between 2 men who'd watched each other bleed. Remember that name, Marcus Reeves. We'll come back to him. And one more thing, those trail cameras Danny had mounted on his back fence. The 4K ones with the audio pickup. He'd put them up 2 years ago when coyotes got into Mrs. Henderson's chickens. Remember those too. April 9th, 2022, a Saturday morning. The moving truck pulled up to 1247 Willow Creek Drive at 9:15 a.m., but it wasn't the moving truck that turned every head on the block. It was the matte black Tesla Model X Plaid that glided up behind it, followed by a pearl white Range Rover Sport. Followed by a third vehicle, a Sprinter van, painted with bright blue lettering across the side. It read VANCE unfiltered, 1.4 M followers, real, raw, uncensored. Out of the Tesla stepped Brett Vance, 29 years old, 6'2", the kind of carefully unkempt beard that costs $300 to maintain. He wore a tight black t-shirt, designer joggers, and the loud, smug confidence of a man who has never been told no in his life. His father, Richard Vance, was a real estate developer in Atlanta. Some folks said the Vance family was worth somewhere north of $40 million. Brett had never held a real job. He didn't need to. At 23, he'd started filming prank videos with his fraternity brothers. 8 years later, he and his wife had built it into something far uglier than that. Out of the Range Rover stepped Kayla Vance, 27, former University of Alabama cheerleader, lifestyle influencer turned co-host of her husband's increasingly cruel content empire, long blonde extensions, white sweatsuit, a ring light already mounted on a tripod inside the front seat. She was already live streaming. Y'all, we are here in our new house in Franklin, Tennessee, and oh my god, it is so country, you are going to die. The Vances had purchased 1247 Willow Creek Drive, an 1,800 square foot 2-story brick colonial, and immediately gutted it down to the studs. By the time the renovation was done in late spring, the house had ballooned to a 4,800 square foot McMansion with a 3-car garage and a fake pillared portico that towered over Mrs. Henderson's modest split level next door. It looked like someone had dropped a casino into a Norman Rockwell painting. The first sign of trouble came on day 3. Danny Holloway walked out his front door at 6:30 a.m., coffee in hand, intending to drive to Lowe's for some lumber, but he couldn't back his pickup truck out of the driveway. The matte black Tesla Model X was parked diagonally across the end of his drive, blocking him completely. Danny stood there for a full minute, then he walked next door, climbed the front steps of 1247 and rang the bell. Brett Vance opened the door in a silk bathrobe holding a green smoothie. Behind him, Kayla was setting up a camera on a tripod in the foyer. "Yeah, "Mornin'," Danny said. "I think you might have parked in front of my driveway by accident." Brett looked past Danny at the Tesla, then back at Danny. Then he smiled, slow, practiced, designed to make a man feel 3 feet tall. "Sorry, G.I. Joe, didn't see you down there." He shut the door. And from behind the closed door, Danny heard the sound of his new neighbor's wife laughing. He walked back to his porch, he sat down, he drank the rest of his coffee, he watched the sunrise. And inside his head, that quiet marine room, the one where Sean Murphy still lived, where the IED still echoed, where 2 decades of training waited politely in the corner, that room turned its light on. But just a little. Just enough. Now, Danny Holloway was not a man who held grudges easily. The Marine Corps had taught him a thing called proportionality. You don't bring a tank to a knife fight. You don't go to war over a parking spot. So 3 days later, Danny did what his late wife Sarah would have done. He walked over to 1247 Willow Creek Drive carrying a wooden basket lined with a blue checkered cloth. Inside the basket, a dozen heirloom tomatoes from his garden, a jar of fig preserves he put up in August, and a handwritten card that said simply, "Welcome to the neighborhood. Danny Holloway next door." It was a Wednesday afternoon, sunny, 72 degrees, the kind of Tennessee spring day that makes you forgive almost anybody. Brett Vance answered the door in workout clothes, sweat dripping from his beard. Kayla appeared behind him within seconds, phone already up, ring light already glowing. "Oh my God, babe, are you seeing this? It's the boomer from next door. He brought us, like, vegetables." Danny held out the basket politely. "Just wanted to introduce myself proper. Tomatoes are from the back garden, the figs." Hey, OG, Brett interrupted, leaning against the doorframe. "Real quick, before the tomato presentation. Do you know what an influencer is?" Danny blinked, "Beg pardon." Brett looked into the camera and grinned. "He doesn't know what an influencer is. Babe, get this, he doesn't know." Kayla zoomed in on Danny's face. Sir, look here. Do you know what TikTok is? Have you ever heard of TikTok?" Danny stood very still. The basket of tomatoes was getting heavy in his arms. "I'm just here to welcome you to the street, ma'am." "Oh my God, he called me ma'am. Babe, he called me ma'am. That is so cute. That is so 1952. Brett took the basket from Danny's hands. He looked inside. He pulled out a single tomato. He held it up to the camera. "So this is what poor people give as housewarming gifts," he said. Then he tossed the tomato, a perfect, ripe, hand-grown Cherokee purple, straight over Danny's shoulder into the front yard, where it splattered against Danny's mailbox. "Welcome wagon, babe, that's the title." The door shut. Danny stood there for maybe 5 seconds. Then he walked down the porch steps, picked up his ruined tomato, walked back to his own yard, and went inside. That video, titled "Poor Boomer Neighbor Tries to Bribe US with Garbage," was posted on TikTok at 4:47 p.m. that same day. By midnight, it had 2 million views. By the end of the week, the comment sections were full of people figuring out who Danny was. Veteran, Marine, widower, lives alone with a dog. Some called him a hero. Most laughed. Direct hit. Now, let me pause here and ask you something, folks. Have you ever tried to do the right thing for somebody, knocked on their door with a hand outstretched, and gotten it slapped down in front of the whole world to see? If you have, drop a comment below and tell me about it. Tell me what you did next. Because what Danny Holloway did next, well, you'll see. He didn't post a response video. He didn't call the police. He didn't even tell his daughter Emma when she came down for Sunday dinner. He just sat down at his kitchen table that night, opened the small leather notebook he kept in the drawer, and wrote. April 13, 2022, 4:47 p.m. First incident, public humiliation video posted online without consent. Witnesses, K. Vance, B. Vance. Action taken, none. He closed the notebook. He put it back in the drawer. And he started counting. Here's what nobody knew at the time. The Vances had a problem. Their content was getting stale. Their algorithm was slipping. Their sponsors, a protein powder company, a knockoff watch brand, were starting to ghost them. But that boomer veteran video had hit something, numbers like they hadn't seen in a year. So Danny Holloway became their new project. It started small, doorbell ditching at 11 p.m., then 1 a.m., then 3 a.m., Brett giggling into his iPhone, sprinting back across the lawn while Murphy barked from inside Danny's house. Then it escalated. Loud bass-heavy music played from speakers on the property line, aimed directly at Danny's bedroom window. They knew, because they'd seen Danny mentioning it on his porch to Mr. Patel, that he had PTSD. That sudden noise was hard for him. So they did it more. They egged his pickup truck on a Thursday night, filmed it, posted it as Military Guy GETS pranked. 18 million views. The comment sections turned into a war, half cheering, half horrified. Brett Vance read every comment, out loud, on a live stream. He laughed about the horrified ones. By June, the Vances had escalated to staging fake confrontations. Kayla would walk past Danny's mailbox with the camera rolling, scream as if she'd seen a snake or been startled, and then post the footage with a caption suggesting Danny had lurked at her or made her uncomfortable. Then came the false reports. 3 calls to the Williamson County Sheriff's Office in 2 weeks. 2 false complaints to Animal Control claiming Murphy was aggressive. 1 report to the Veterans Administration trying to get Danny's service dog certification revoked. Each one investigated, each one dismissed, but each one ate at Danny's days. Each one cost him hours, paperwork, phone calls. The other neighbors saw it. Mrs. Henderson, who'd known Danny for 10 years, brought him a casserole and sat with him on his porch for an hour without saying much. Mr. Patel offered to file a noise complaint with the HOA. But here's the thing about the HOA. The Vances had moved fast. By August, Brett Vance had bought himself onto the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association board with a $4,000 improvement donation. Kayla was now the social media coordinator. Their friend Tyler, a third influencer who came down from Atlanta on weekends to film collabs, had been appointed treasurer. The HOA, in other words, was not going to help. So Danny did what an old Marine investigator does. He documented. Every single incident went into the leather notebook. Date, time, description, witnesses. He printed time-stamped photos. He saved screenshots of every video. He filed certified mail complaints with the sheriff's office and kept the receipts. And every Saturday morning, he climbed up on his back fence and checked the trail cameras. The 4K trail cameras with audio pickup. The ones nobody knew about. By late September of 2022, Danny Holloway had filled 47 pages of his notebook. He had 81 separate documented incidents. He had 93 video files saved to 2 encrypted hard drives, one of which he kept in a fireproof safe in his bedroom closet. He had also lost 12 pounds. He hadn't slept a full night in 2 months. And Murphy, his good and faithful Murphy, had developed a nervous tremor in his back legs from being startled awake every night by the sound of Brett Vance pounding on the front door at 2 a.m. But Danny still hadn't called Marcus Reeves. Not yet. Because some part of Danny Holloway, the part that still believed in fences and good manners and giving a man one more chance, still hoped this was going to stop. It wasn't going to stop. October 14th, 2022, a Tuesday evening. The weather had turned, a gray, damp Tennessee fall, the kind of evening where the light dies fast and the smell of wood smoke comes early. Danny was inside the kitchen, frying a pork chop in his cast-iron skillet, listening to a Vince Gill album on his old CD player. Murphy was outside in the backyard, sniffing along the fence line the way he always did at sundown. The Vances were home. Danny knew because the Tesla was in the driveway and because Brett's voice, that loud, performative laugh, had been carrying over the fence for an hour. Then Murphy howled. It wasn't a bark, it wasn't his alert. It was a howl Danny had never heard before, a deep, painful sound that tore through the screen door and stopped Danny's heart cold. Then silence. Danny dropped his spatula. He grabbed the maglite off the counter. He moved through the back door faster than his bad back should have allowed. Murph. Nothing. The flashlight beam swept the yard, past the woodpile, past the rose bushes Sarah had planted, to the back fence. And there he was. 80 pounds of Belgian Malinois lying on his side in the wet grass, foam at his mouth, his back legs twitching, his eyes wide and confused. Beside him, half-eaten, a wad of raw hamburger meat, sweet-smelling, too sweet. Antifreeze. Danny didn't think. He scooped up his dog, 140 pounds of dead weight on his ruined back, and he ran, out the gate, across the front lawn, into the cab of his pickup truck, Murphy's head in his lap. He drove 11 miles to the Franklin Veterinary Emergency Hospital with his hand on Murphy's chest the whole way. "Stay with me, son, stay with me, stay with me." The vet, a young woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, took one look at Murphy and started running. It was 7:42 p.m. when Danny carried his service dog through the front doors. It was 11:30 p.m. when Dr. Chen came out to the waiting room and told Danny that Murphy was alive. Barely. They'd induced vomiting. They'd given him Fompazole, the antidote. They'd put him on IV fluids. He'd be in the ICU for at least 4 days. The bill in the end came to $11,400. But that wasn't what made Danny Holloway sit down in that vet office parking lot at 11:45 p.m. and put his head in his hands. What made Danny put his head in his hands was the call he'd received an hour earlier, while Murphy was still in surgery. It was Mrs. Henderson from down the street. "Danny," she'd said, her voice shaking, "I don't know if you've seen it yet, but the Vances. They posted a video 40 minutes ago. They're calling it pranking the boomer's mean dog. Danny, they filmed it. They filmed themselves throwing the meat over the fence. They're laughing, Danny." Danny didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he just said, "Thank you, Alina, I'll handle it." He drove home at midnight. He pulled into his driveway. He went inside. He sat in his recliner. He looked at the empty spot on the rug where Murphy usually slept. And then, for the first time in maybe a decade, Gunnery Sergeant Daniel Patrick Holloway, United States Marine Corps, retired, put his hands over his face and cried. For about 3 minutes. Then he stopped. He got up. He walked to the kitchen. He picked up his cell phone. And at 12:47 a.m. on October 15, 2022, he called a number he had not called in 18 months, the personal cell phone of a man named Marcus Reeves. Direct hit now, folks. If you think Danny Holloway was about to march back over to that house with a baseball bat and do something he'd regret, you have not been paying attention. Danny Holloway didn't bring tanks to knife fights. But sometimes, a man brings the entire United States federal government. Here's what nobody on Willow Creek Drive knew about Danny Holloway. Those last 8 years of his Marine Corps career, the ones spent in Marine Corps CID, Danny hadn't just been a paper pusher. He had been one of the most respected criminal investigators in the Department of the Navy. He had testified in 17 federal trials. He had personally trained 2 graduating classes of new agents at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. And one of the men he had trained back in 2014 was a young recruit named Marcus Allen Reeves. Marcus Reeves, the Marine he'd served with in Fallujah. Marcus Reeves, who had transferred from the Corps to the Bureau in 2010 and risen fast. Marcus Reeves, who in October of 2022 was the special agent in charge of the FBI's Memphis field office. The man Danny called every Sunday at 7 p.m. When Danny dialed at 12:47 a.m. that Tuesday night, Marcus picked up on the second ring. "Danny." "Marcus, they poisoned my dog." There was a pause, just one breath. "Tell me everything." Danny told him everything, the 81 incidents, the leather notebook, the trail cameras, the 4K footage with audio, the hard drives, the video the Vances had just posted, the $11,000 in vet bills, the fact that Murphy might never walk right again. Marcus listened, and then Marcus said 3 sentences that changed everything. "Danny, you need to know something. We've been watching the Vances for 14 months. Drive to Memphis tomorrow morning. Bring everything." You see, folks, here's what nobody knew. The Vance Unfiltered media empire had a problem. Their merchandise side hustle, branded t-shirts, hoodies, limited edition prank merch boxes that sold for $89.99 was a fraud. The Vances had been taking pre-orders for limited drops they had no intention of fulfilling. They'd collect the money, cancel the orders, refund maybe 60%, keep the rest. It was a wire fraud scheme run across 48 states. The Postal Inspection Service had been building a case for over a year. The FBI had been quietly tracking transactions through 3 shell LLCs registered in Brett Vance's father's name. But it was a slow case, the kind of case that takes another 2 years to bring. Until October 15, 2022, when those same FBI agents woke up to find a video of 2 YouTube influencers laughing about poisoning a federally certified service dog belonging to a disabled combat veteran. Now, you may not know this, folks, but in 2019, a law passed Congress called the PACT Act, the Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture Act. It made it a federal felony to engage in intentional animal cruelty when the act is captured on video and distributed across state lines. Maximum penalty, 7 years in federal prison. Per account. And the Vance Unfiltered video pranking the boomer's mean dog had been posted to TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and 3 private Discord servers within 20 minutes of upload, distributed to over 40 states. Add in the wire fraud, add in the conspiracy, add in the false reports to law enforcement, add in the harassment of a disabled veteran, a federally protected class under several statutes. Marcus Reeves and his team spent the next 3 weeks building the cleanest, fastest indictment of his career. And on the morning of November 8, 2022, that indictment was ready to be served. Direct hit now. Let me pause here, folks, and ask you something. Have you ever watched somebody who hurt you get exactly what they deserve, not because you went looking for it, but because the truth just finally caught up to them? Drop a comment and tell me. Because what happened on Willow Creek Drive that morning, every neighbor on that street remembers it. And the Vances, they'll remember it for the next 7 to 10 years. In a federal cell. November 8, 2022, Tuesday morning, 6:17 a.m. A cold, slow rain falling on Franklin, Tennessee. The kind of rain that doesn't ask permission and doesn't apologize. The streetlights still burning along Willow Creek Drive. Mrs. Henderson's coffee maker just clicking on. 3 black Chevy Suburbans turned onto the cul-de-sac with their headlights on but their flashing lights off. They came in slow, quiet, the way professionals come. They parked in a triangle around 1247 Willow Creek Drive. 12 federal agents stepped out. Navy windbreakers with bright yellow letters, FBI. Behind them, 2 unmarked sedans from the United States Marshals Service. Behind them, a black SUV from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Behind them, a white van from Williamson County Animal Cruelty Investigation. And down the street at the corner behind the magnolia trees, 3 local news vans had quietly set up over the previous 20 minutes. Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 17. Somebody had tipped them off. I'll let you guess who. The lead agent stepped up onto the front porch of 1247 Willow Creek Drive. He was a tall black man in his 50s, his short hair starting to silver at the temples, his face calm as a Sunday morning. Special Agent in Charge Marcus Allen Reeves. He rang the doorbell once. The door opened 30 seconds later. Brett Vance stood in the doorway in a navy silk bathrobe holding a green smoothie, his hair sleep mussed. Yeah, what? Marcus Reeves held up a folded document. Mr. Brett Vance, I have a federal warrant for your arrest. Please step outside the residence. Brett laughed a real laugh, the smoothie sloshed in his hand. Bro, are you kidding me right now? Do you know who I am? Yes, sir, Marcus said. I do. Step outside. Behind Brett, Kayla appeared in a pink robe, phone already up, ring light scrambling to follow her. She was live streaming. Oh my God, you guys, the FBI is at our door right now. This has got to be a prank. Somebody is punking us. Marcus turned to her with the second warrant. Mrs. Kayla Vance, federal warrant for your arrest. Please put down the phone. She did not put down the phone. The handcuffs went on at 6:24 a.m. Brett Vance, in his silk bathrobe, was walked across his own front lawn in the cold rain to the Leeds Suburban. Kayla Vance, in her pink robe and bare feet, live-streamed her own arrest to 14,000 viewers until an agent gently took her phone and ended the broadcast. Behind them, the search warrant team moved in. They took 11 computers, 43 hard drives, 3 professional cameras, the entire contents of a basement merchandise warehouse, boxes of business records, 6 gold-plated YouTube play buttons came off the wall and went into evidence bags. The federal indictment listed 14 charges: wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 2 counts of violating the PACT Act, filing false reports to federal law enforcement, harassment of a disabled veteran, tax evasion, money laundering through 3 shell companies. The civil suit, filed 2 weeks later by Danny Holloway's daughter Emma, who happened to be a personal injury attorney in Nashville, sought $2,300,000 in damages. For the dog, for the harassment, for the medical bills, for the emotional distress of a disabled combat veteran being targeted for content. Across the street on the porch of 1245 Willow Creek Drive, a 62-year-old Marine sat in a wooden rocking chair, drinking black coffee from a chipped mug that said Semper Fi. Beside him on a folded blanket lay a Belgian Malinois named Murphy, thinner than he used to be, tremor still in his back legs, but alive and awake and watching. Danny Holloway did not stand up, he did not shout, he did not even look directly across the street. He just rocked slowly and watched the rain. When Marcus Reeves walked across the lawn to him, Danny stood up out of respect for an old Marine. The 2 men shook hands. Then Marcus crouched down and scratched Murphy behind his good ear. "He gonna be okay, Danny?" Danny looked down at his dog. His voice was very quiet. "He's a Marine, Marcus. He's gonna be okay." Direct hit, you see, folks, that right there is the difference. The Vances thought this was about pranks and clicks and going viral. They never understood that the man next door had spent 20 years studying how bad people get caught. They never understood that quiet doesn't mean weak. They never understood that some men just sit on their porch and let the system do exactly what the system was built to do. After the Suburbans drove away, the strangest thing happened on Willow Creek Drive. Nobody cheered. Mrs. Henderson came out onto her front porch in her bathrobe and slippers. She just stood there holding a coffee mug in both hands. Mr. Patel walked out to his mailbox in his work clothes and stayed there a long time looking at nothing. The Marshalls, both of them, came out of their garage and stood at the end of their driveway, their arms folded, silent. One by one, every neighbor on Willow Creek Drive came outside in the cold rain. Nobody said a word. They just stood there and looked at the house at 1247, and then, slowly, one by one, they turned and looked across the street at the man in the rocking chair on the porch of 1245. And Mrs. Henderson, 76 years old, retired schoolteacher, widow of a Korean War veteran, raised her coffee mug, just slightly, in a small, private salute. Mr. Patel did the same. The Marshalls did the same. Danny Holloway nodded back, once, the smallest nod a man can give and still call it a nod. Then everyone went back inside. In the weeks that followed, Brett Vance's father came once, a big man in a $1,000 suit driving a Mercedes-Benz S-Class, to clean out a few boxes from the house and post a for sale BY owner sign in the yard. He did not knock on Danny Holloway's door. He did not look at any neighbor. He drove away in 45 minutes and never came back. Brett's friends from Atlanta, the influencers, the protein powder sponsors, the so-called best men from his wedding, none of them came at all. Tyler, the 3rd member of the Vance Unfiltered crew, was indicted in February of 2023 on his own wire fraud charges. He took a plea deal, gave evidence against the Vances, and disappeared from the internet entirely. The bank foreclosed on 1247 Willow Creek Drive in March of 2023. A repo company came in April for the matte black Tesla Model X. Nobody waved goodbye. Because nobody had ever said hello. 2 years later, fall of 2024. Brett Vance is currently serving 7 years and 4 months at the Federal Correctional Institution in Yazoo City, Mississippi. His appeals were denied in August. He works in the prison laundry. His follower count is 0. Kayla Vance accepted a plea deal in early 2023, 4 years at the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, in exchange for testifying against her husband. She filed for divorce from her cell. The divorce was finalized in May of 2023. She has not been seen on social media since. The Vance Unfiltered YouTube channel was deleted. The TikTok account was banned. The merchandise website was seized by the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. The 40,000 customers who had been defrauded received partial restitution from Brett Vance's father, who paid out of pocket to keep his name off any further indictments. Danny Holloway. Danny is still at 1245 Willow Creek Drive. His daughter Emma comes down every other weekend now. Sarah's rose bushes bloomed bigger than ever in the spring of 2024, heavy red blooms that Mrs. Henderson said looked like a quiet thank you. There is a new family living at 1247. The McMansion was demolished by the next owner, a kind young couple named Daniel and Rachel Kim. Daniel is a high school music teacher. Rachel is a captain in the United States Army Nurse Corps, currently stationed at Fort Campbell. They have 2 boys, ages 4 and 6, who ride their bicycles up and down Willow Creek Drive every evening before dinner. The boys call Danny Mr. Holloway. They feed Murphy a piece of cheese through the fence every Saturday morning. And Murphy, old Murphy, with the tremor in his back legs and the slightly slower step, still sleeps at the foot of Danny Holloway's bed every single night. On Danny's mantle, there are now 3 framed photographs. The first is of Corporal Sean Murphy, age 22, in his marine dress blues, smiling like he had 100 years left. The second is of Sarah Holloway, age 56, the year before the cancer, standing in her rose garden in a yellow sundress. The third is of Murphy the Belgian Malinois, 80 pounds of muscle and loyalty, taken on the back porch of 1245 Willow Creek Drive on a sunny Saturday afternoon in May. 3 good souls, 1 quiet old marine. And a rose bush that just keeps blooming. Now folks, let me leave you with something tonight. We live in a world that sometimes seems like it rewards the loudest mouths, the cruelest jokes, the cheapest clicks. A world where 2 young people can build $1 million empire by pointing a camera at strangers and calling it entertainment. But here's a truth as old as this country itself. There are still men like Danny Holloway out there, quiet men, patient men, men with 20 years of training in how the world really works. Men who were shaped in places you've never heard of by losses you'll never understand. Men who ask politely the first time, and the second time, and the third. But not the 4th. Never mistake a quiet man for a weak man. Never mistake patience for permission. And never ever pick a fight with a Marine who has nothing left to lose but his honor and a dog that he loves. The Vances thought they were filming a prank video that night. They were filming the last free evening of their lives. If this story moved you tonight, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We put out a new story every week. And drop a comment below. Do you have a Danny Holloway in your life, a quiet hero who finally stood up? Tell us about them, because the world needs to remember they're out there. We'll see you next time, folks. Stay quiet, stay patient, and stay dangerous. This story is inspired by real events and public court records. Names, locations, and specific details have been changed or dramatized for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals is coincidental.